Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Claude Werder of Brandon Hall Group, and this is our webinar today. We're very excited to have called Building Compelling Use Cases for Emerging Learning Technologies. The power of AI and XR, or extended reality, and other emerging technologies is certainly one of the really hot topics in learning now. And we have two insightful experts to talk about it today. Joining me is Bob Schustak, Director of Customer Solutions for VPS, and Nicole Fairchild, VP of Enterprise Training for Entergy. Let's start with Bob first. He's been part of VPS for 27 years, starting as an instructional designer, then moving through projects, functional, and program management into his current role as Director of Customer Solutions. He's responsible now for connecting learning leaders with VPS services and offerings that help solve business challenges. In his time in the industry, Bob's worked with learning leaders across a huge number of industries and sectors, including U.S. government and agencies, U.S. and allied militaries, automotive, aerospace and defense, banking, consumer goods, energy and power generation, insurance, medical device, and pharmaceutical. So he doesn't have much experience at all. Nicole Fairchild is Vice President of Enterprise Training for Entergy, which delivers electricity and gas to 3 million utility customers in 4 southern U.S. states. And she joined Entergy in 2020 as a recovery manager for the Grand Gulf Nuclear Station. And after that, she served as senior manager for training before her current role. She became director and then VP. Nicole has worked at PPL, Talon Energy, Tennessee Valley Authority, Pennsylvania Public Education Systems, and Wilkes University. She's certified in Harvard Instructional Rounds, Curriculum and Instruction, Educational Leadership, and Secondary Education. So they're going to bring us a lot of insight today. Before we get started here, we've got a few more housekeeping slides, but really want to take time to thank VPS for sponsoring our webinar today. With over 90 years of experience in developing and managing training solutions, VPS is a trusted partner in helping individuals and organizations succeed. Its tailored content delivery and management services enhance performance, encourage growth, and positively impact client success. VPS prides itself on the ability to listen, to take the time needed to understand the unique needs of each organization, and provide customized end-to-end managed services capabilities and competencies that bring real value. So at VPS, the mission is clear: to empower every individual and organization to reach their full potential through innovative training solutions and skill development. For those of you who aren't familiar with Brandon Hall Group, we're a human capital management research and advisory firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. We have 6 practice areas, and they include learning and development, talent management, and leadership development. Also, we currently have several certification programs open for enrollment, including our Certified Learning Strategist program, which covers emerging technologies and many other things around learning strategy. Visit certification.brandonhall.com to learn more about how to earn that designation. Your participation in Brandon Hall Group's research surveys is one of the most crucial components of our insights and thought leadership. So if you have a few minutes to spare and see any topics that you can take a survey for, always appreciated. Links will be available in your handout, or you can always visit brandonhall.com. Once the results are analyzed, all participants in our research receive a complimentary report. And finally, a few logistics. To ask questions, please use the questions panel on your control bar. We'll leave time at the end for questions, and we may take some as we go as well. So don't save them all for the end. The webinar is being recorded. We'll share a link to the recording and a PDF of the presentation via email in roughly 24 hours. If you'd like to download a copy of today's presentation right away, the link to do so will be available in the chat shortly. The chat is going to be open the whole time, and we really hope you'll share your thoughts and experiences as we go along today. Your feedback and perspective on what we present today and on your own experiences, what you're going through, will make the webinar more valuable for everyone. So I hope you'll join in the discussion, share your thoughts as we go, or just simply pop in, say hello, and let us know where you're joining from today. Before we wrap up today's webinar, we'll announce a lucky winner to a raffle. We've been holding raffles lately, and the winner will receive a $100 Amazon gift card. So stick around to the end so you can get that. The winner will send an email. Receive an email shortly after the webinar to celebrate your win. So thanks to everyone for being an active participant in today's presentation. So here's the agenda. We have a lot to cover. We'll cover with the basic. We'll start with the basics, which is why this topic is so important right now. And then spend a lot of time digging into what makes a good use case for AI and other types of emerging technologies. And then the next steps after you establish a good use case. We'll sum up with some key takeaways and of course leave some time for Q&A. And we also hope you'll pitch in with comments and questions as we go. So let's get started with a quick poll, get you involved right away. We always like to get a sense of the current state of our attendees, where they are regarding the topic that we're talking about today. So we'd like to know how you would rate your organization's proficiency at conducting a needs analysis for learning. Choose one of the following if you would, that best describes. Is it excellence, like you should be on this webinar, you're so good at this? Good and getting better? Fair, you're doing okay, but you could use some pointers and some assistance? Or we really need help. Maybe you're just beginning or you're experimenting, having some struggles, and you would like to have some additional help. So it always helps us when we get a sense of where you are in your journey, and we can kind of adjust what we talk about along the way based on that. So let's see what the results are. So the majority, about 60%, is in the category of fair. We could use some pointers. Very few classify themselves as excellent. We got about 28% saying good and getting better. So this is where most people usually are, in the middle somewhere. Haven't gotten a good start, enough to begin to feel like they're making progress and looking for some additional insight and advice. So that's great. We look forward to getting into it. And so let's go ahead and get started. Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Claude. I'm somewhat encouraged by the number of folks that clicked fair, that we could use some pointers, because although we're going to be talking about AI and XR, this is really about the importance of doing proper needs analysis to drive use cases. The other thing I liked about Claude's poll was the first answer that was kind of tongue-in-cheek, that, oh my gosh, we should be conducting this webinar. And the reality is, it's a topic that we should all be talking about with our peers, within our network, within our organization as learning leaders, right? I mean, AI is pretty much everywhere. We're early on in what I think is a dynamic inflection point for learning and development. Where our goal here is really, like Claude said, to offer some perspectives and some examples of adoption and practice and technology, and how to develop an effective use case to determine when AI and what type of AI should be used within your organization, as well as to work with your stakeholders and sponsors to get those points across. So just to touch on a few of these things here, unless you've been living under a rock, right? AI is everywhere. It's touching everything we do. My goodness, there was what, a 9-month strike from Hollywood writers related to AI. Who would have thought they saw that thing coming? But the global AI market is huge, right? It's 196 billion. I think it's supposed to grow by 13 times that by the year 2030. From now until 2030, there's over 38% compound annual growth rate in artificial intelligence. So if you're, got some money to invest, do your research, there you go. That'd be a pretty good return, depending on what you pick. And the interesting thing is, when organizations are surveyed, 83%, and this is a survey that was done in March of this year, 83% of the organization surveys said that AI is their top priority in their business plans, 83%. And hold on to that number for a little bit, because we're going to show you another statistic in a bit that says maybe we've got a little bit of work to do in aligning L&D and how we're effectively using advanced technologies like AI and XR to business imperatives. The second point of this is about the tail wagging the dog, is something we're familiar with, right? We're either going to shape solutions for organizations, or we're going to be shaped by what happens. I'm sure other folks on this call have had the experience of having someone in your network, or a peer, or a stakeholder, or perhaps your manager, coming up with a study that someone else had done, or how other folks are using certain technologies, and saying, "My gosh, why aren't you using this?" And seemingly being caught behind a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean we're behind. Not all stories are great stories, but the point is that things are happening out there with AI, with XR, and we need to be tied into it. The other thing, and I think this really gets to what Nicole's going to be talking about in a little bit, is that the answers for L&D professionals don't require a PhD in data science solutions. To be sure, when we talk about different types of AI and XR solutions, and here we're going to focus a lot on AI in this webinar. Yeah, you got to have people who understand machine learning. You have to have people understand how to properly program and train a large language model, and work with generative AI in secure environments. Those people don't have to be us. They need to be people on our teams, or within our partners, or within our networks. Our job as learning leaders is to prepare our organizations to identify the right opportunities and the right times to use these as solutions. So that's really just kind of setting the stage as why we think this topic is important. And Claude or Nicole, don't know if you'd add anything to that or not.
Well, I've got some data to throw to that, Bob, and this is some data from a survey we did at the beginning of February, and hopefully the numbers are a little bit better now if we did the survey. But you mentioned 86% of business leaders say AI is top priority, but learning in HR doesn't seem to be on the same wavelength. When we asked about the basic understanding of AI, and by this I don't mean the programming of it and training models. Talking about basic use of it, how it can be used in learning. 40% said they have a basic understanding, 36% said they have a moderate understanding, only 9% felt that they had a detailed understanding, and 15% said no or marginal understanding. So learning organizations don't need to be experts, but they do need to have this functional understanding. And they also have to, I believe, have what we call platform vision, which is kind of means an understanding of learning technologies and the types of technologies that the organization needs in order to meet learning and business needs. And one of the things I've been struck by, I do interviews with learning organizations all the time, and we did a survey on this too. And a lot of learning people are not using AI in their personal lives, Gen AI in their personal lives. And it's one of those things. We had a webinar a couple months ago, and the learning leaders said you've got to touch it, you've got to use it to understand its power and also its limitations. And so we always urge people to really roll up their sleeves, use it yourself, get a good understanding of what it can do, what it can't do, what the potential pitfalls are. You need to dig in a little bit and use the technology to understand how it works and what might be good use cases for it in your organizations. And as Bob said, you've got to do that because it's changing every day. I mean, literally every day there's new tools coming out. You can't experiment with it one day, wait a month or two, not do anything, and then think that you're up to date on what's going on. It really takes some immersion and some prioritization of understanding this in order to use it yourself and also for your organization.
Yeah, I think those are great points, Claude. And just kind of struck me when you were going through that, and perhaps some of the answers that were in there as well. I should have mentioned this up front. I think it's very important for us when we're talking within our organizations to really define what we're talking about when we talk about AI.
Yeah.
Because it's we covered a few different topics: generative AI, large language models, machine learning, and there's other facets and variants of that. And without putting some boundaries or a fence around that, it can be a topic that is very difficult to tackle, and people can run to a worst case scenario. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. No interruption.
Yeah.
The other thing I was just going to share is learning organizations as a whole, and companies as a whole
Yeah.
are not necessarily investing as much as they could be in emerging technologies related to learning and HCM. So there's not a lot of that. This was done at the end of 2023. This survey, this data. So I'm sure it's changed, but a lot needs to continue to grow in terms of the investment and the knowledge people have. We've got Greg asked, where do you start to go from marginal understanding to basic or moderate understanding? And I think it is just understanding, real marginal to me is just have a basic understanding of what Gen AI is all about, or AI. And then the more you use it, the more you read about it, the more you maybe experiment with some tools, I think you get a better sense of how it could be used in your personal life and also in the organization. I think, like I said, it's about hands-on learning, really understanding how things work.
Yeah, I would agree. Go ahead, Nicole.
No, I'm sorry. I would just say I read an article recently that was very interesting about AI, and I think that we're seeing this in our industry because people don't fully understand, and some people are in fact scared, right? There are some people who believe that AI will replace the human factor, when in reality, I look at it like this. If we can use AI to alleviate admin burden, then we can have our trainers out in the field mentoring, teaching. But right now we find, at least in our industry, that our trainers are really stuck at a desk doing the administrative work. That's where I would like to target the AI for. And, we have an example last week. We have e-learning that we're developing and we need audio. And somebody on the team asked for an extension for 2 weeks because they thought they had to go read the audio to finish the e-learning. And, we said, no, that's the exact place we want to use AI. Go use AI, implement the audio, do your self-check, etc. The human factor is still there, but it really helps us be more efficient.
Yeah, it really potentially elevates the role of the learning professional. Is that AI can do some of the work that you've been doing, but you still need to be the person who is authoring the prompts and doing the prep work and checking the work, because it's not infallible. We use AI in our research to get some sources and things, and a lot of it is really good. But I found a big problem last week with something that was generating really big, potentially huge problem with what it generated. And so you do have to check it. And so there's always going to be a role. In a webinar a few months ago, we talked to some learning leaders, and Nicole, they also talked about this fear of losing your job. And one of the speakers said, the only way you're going to lose your job if you don't understand and know how to work with AI. If you know how to work with it, you'll have a job, because humans are still needed. But if you ignore it, if you think it's going to go away, and if you are ignorant about it, yeah, maybe then your job's in jeopardy. But AI in and of itself is not going to take your job.
Yeah, absolutely, Claude. The one, and just kind of coming back to the slide here real quick, this is one of the numbers that really struck me when we were prepping for, this webinar, and the number that I was really looking at against that 83% that were, business execs are saying, hey, this is our top priority, right, for the business in 2024. And here we are at the end of 2023, and folks in learning are saying we're only they're investing only 11%, or heavily or moderately investing in emerging technologies. Now, and obviously emerging technologies covers more than just AI or XR or things of that nature. But for that very reason, this number is probably even a little bit lower when you get to those specific areas. So to me, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what folks say they want and perhaps where we're currently at as a group.
Agreed. Okay, let's move on. Talk a little bit about what makes a good use case for AI. I'll turn it over to you two.
Okay, well, go ahead. Yeah, I'm happy to start, and if anybody has any contributions, love to hear them. The first, there's 4 things on here. The first is that The initiative is transformational, right? That we're looking at in terms of making a good use case for AI. And by transformational, I mean a couple different things, right? Transformational initiatives usually involve large cross-functional, cross-organizational elements, lots of different stakeholders, sometimes disparate data systems and input. They're usually not stovepiped type of things. And along with that, the second way to look at transformation is that the ways of doing things are not sustainable for the rate of need. And then go back to the example that Nicole just gave, right, about the folks saying, we're getting a lot more time to do these videos. The need date, the pace of change, what the organization need isn't supported by the current way of doing things. In those ways, it kind of goes to the second point, that the initiative is really about optimization and focused on process and process outcomes and learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are always going to be absolutely important, absolutely vital. You're not going to sub-optimize the learning results and the business benefits because you want to use AI. That's not a good use case. But typically you wouldn't use AI just to say, I want to increase learner engagement without direct benefit to the bottom line. And we'll show in some of the use cases and examples coming up what this looks like in practice. The next point is that the initiative is supported by data, right? Not a big surprise that drives the need for change, but doing something different, for doing something transformational. And this is data that comes from the needs analysis, that process that Nicole's going to talk about shortly, but it also comes from the business and stakeholders, and we need this to be able to support the change and the investment at the end of the day when we do complete an initiative. The other thing that I think is important, and I've seen a lot of this recently, is that there shouldn't be, I shouldn't say can't be, you never say that, but there shouldn't be a low risk, low cost alternative with similar benefits, right? We are stewards for our organization. We don't want to do AI because AI is hot and sexy and new. And someone says, my gosh, we need an AI project. Well, you need certain type of results, and there's different ways of going about that. And particularly when we get into generative AI, and things that involve perhaps data security and risks of that nature, we need to control for those things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the process. So again, that really, even that comes from the analysis process for the type of media modality selection and what that looks like within your learning ecosystem. And I want to give an example of something like that I came across at the end of last year. In November and December of 2023, we VPS entered a competition with the U.S. Navy. And the competition was explicitly directed to use large language models to decrease the amount of time and SME support needed to conduct front-end analysis, particularly the analysis and front part of the design process. And that was interesting because it came with that directive. And at the end of the day, out of everybody nationally, we ended up taking second place. No shame in that. But what was interesting about the solution that we provided the Navy was that, yes, it did have large language models. Yes, we did train a large language models to do certain aspects of the process, but 80% of it or more was really handled, the grunt work was handled by machine learning and programming that enabled the AI to be effective. So the point there being is that there's different ways of going about things. Some people put machine learning into the AI category. Some people don't and say it's its own thing. But as it's anything else, we just can't be enamored with the title and the solution. We have to uphold the responsibilities of stewardship that we have to our respective organizations. So that's what I got on that. Claude, Nicole, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I would just say one other thing is don't negate the need for governance in this space to the democratization for which you utilize this technology. Because depending on the field that you're working in, just like Bob said, there is certain data you only can get from within, and then there's certain data that it's okay. But if you don't have governance around this, you run the risk of regulation. There's all kinds of things that could happen, litigation, plagiarism. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle. It is something we have to be very leery of. So make sure that you have the governance in place. We just created an AI chief executive officer, and the whole part of what they're working on right now is the governance so that we can set clear direction for our people on what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Great point.
Yeah, great point. So maybe we can dig into that a little bit more as toward the end. We're going to get into some use cases here in a second, some actual examples and another poll question, but just a little bit of data on what learning professionals are telling us right now, their planned uses for AI technology is in supporting learning this year. So right now, the biggest one by far is 53% saying that they're going to try to generate learning content using probably generative AI for the most part. And then you can see the other percentages. I won't go through all of them, but skills assessment is a distant second, then personalized learning. I think the other thing, AI chatbots, the thing though on the right to take notice of is 22% of organizations, and this was done just at the end of April, so it's just a few days old, 22%, so they're not using AI for learning at all. And that's what I worry about, is that we're losing out. You don't necessarily have to rush to use it, but at least learn about it, look at the potential applications, start building those potential use cases. You don't want to be sitting on the sidelines. And so that's a good segue, I think, Bob, to start talking about some use cases. But first, another quick poll. So we'd like to know, and we realize that it may be one or more of these answers, but we'd like you to pick the answer that best answers this question. What is your organization's biggest challenge in determining effective use cases for emerging technologies? Is it lack of expertise, insufficient time and resources, difficulty aligning with business outcomes, or inadequate tools and methodologies? And again, we understand it might be more than one, but pick the one that you think is the biggest one for you. We're interested in hearing what people have to say. And then we'll start jumping into sample use cases in the next 5 to 7 minutes here. Probably people taking a little time to make up their minds. Hey, how are we doing? Oh, here we go, I think. So let's see, 48% say the biggest issue is insufficient time and resources. Understandable. But keep in mind on that if 86% of business leaders say this AI is the biggest priority, then learning needs to think about, should they be changing their priorities to be in line with what the rest of the organization is doing? 24% say it's a lack of expertise, and then smaller percentages saying alignment is a problem and inadequate tools and methodologies. Okay, so let's jump into some examples of use cases.
Yeah, Clive, before I get there, I just want to comment on that chart. I kind of smiled when the results came up and the heavy voting on insufficient time and resources. For a number of years, I worked as a Six Sigma black belt for a lot of different, supporting a lot of different organizations. And, when we started doing root cause analysis, before we got down to the bottom level, the number one issue superficially was always of what needs to be improved is communication. But the number two one is always it has to do with the time and resources available to get things done. So I just had to smile when I saw that come up there. Yeah. Yep. So to talk about some sample AI use cases and talent and L&D, and I put talent in there because it's funny how some of the use cases we're seeing and working with folks on are are migrating somewhat to that side of the house. And before I start, I'm gonna cover some of these at a high level. If you'd like some detail, talk about things behind this, I'm happy to provide you with some information afterwards. Just hit me up, or happy to talk about things more and how we got to where we did and what we used. That's fine, but we're not going to necessarily have time to go through all that detail in this. So the first couple things I want to point out as we look at these four things here. One is that, like I mentioned before, in terms of what makes a good use case, they're all process oriented, every single one of them. And the second thing I want to point out is the nauseating detail I went through, or painstaking effort I went through to make sure that every one of these boxes ended with the same statement, which is that AI generates and SMEs validate, and we can generates doesn't mean necessarily generative AI, but it's that grunt work, the work to get the work done. And I think that really ties back well to what Nicole talked about earlier about the human factors and the human in the loop, and allowing folks to contribute the value added aspects of what they were hired to do without saddling them with the administrative or grunt work or churning, to get things done. To me, this really frees people, these things free people up to be the best contributors they can be to organizational value. So just wanted to point those things out. I'm going to start at the top left there. And a good use cases, and this is more on the talent side, is moving from competencies to skills-based. And in this instance, it was hiring and development. But we see a lot of work being done in moving from competencies to skill-based training systems, evaluation systems. In this case, it was hiring. I had a call this morning with a global auto manufacturer that is looking at how they basically reconfigure their entire training system to move from competencies to skills, and how we can use AI to do that. This particular example is also taken from a global auto manufacturer, and the issue here is they wanted to move to skills-based hiring and evaluation of resumes and for making decisions. And if we did this manually, you could just imagine how long it would take to find the commonalities and consistencies and specific language. And we were able to actually, in this instance, work through machine learning to create a model that did this, and then really in a matter of days, once it was created for almost 100 different job roles. So again, a lot of application here in the talent area. Moving counterclockwise in the slide, it's a good use cases when it comes to rationalizing or merging or deciding between data courses and curricula. I'm sure just about everyone on this call has been a part of a merger and an acquisition. In some business they've been in. I know I've been through several in my lifetime in the learning industry. Nicole, I'm sure you've been a part of them, maybe in the energy and power generation utility business. I know folks are buying, each other all the time and integrating, and using AI to create a best in breed curriculum, merging content at the learning objective is a time consuming task when you're looking at a large number of objectives. Again, able to train large language models, use machine learning to actually create a straw man best in breed model. And with this, you're bringing in all sorts of data, right? Your evaluations that you have over time. It assumes you have data to work with. But it then creates a straw man, if you will, for SMEs to work with to improve from a baseline versus having to create everything themselves. The final two on the right-hand side, I'm going to group these together a little bit because they have to do with really the course content development in this area, video development, that, as Claude showed, was the number one use case or use for how people are using AI. And in these cases, it really has to do with the very similar to the example Nicole gave earlier, that the time allotted or the time needed or the cycle time for the organization that was needed to generate and supply information to field technicians or learners did not allow for the process in use, the historic process, to be used. And there's two different examples here. One was actually using the library that we've created with these folks over time to create a script that the SME could then validate versus scripting something brand new that had been the traditional practice. And the second was very similar to what Nicole talked about, where they were using AI to generate the audio track and the narrative track. We're using AI to produce live training videos, which have come so far with the tools that are out there. And really, when you think about the life cycle cost and maintenance of live videos versus doing digital updates, absolutely phenomenal cost savings over time, and much better speed to the learner. So just a few different use cases there. Again, all these things, AI is a tool. It's not the answer. There's always humans in the loop. Claude?
Nicole, anything to add before we move on to systems?
No, I don't. I just was thinking about, we were talking about Microsoft Copilot yesterday, and as we're talking about like even putting videos together, it's just like the future of putting together a PowerPoint presentation. So many people still use PowerPoint presentations as their lesson plans. And so Microsoft Copilot is going to be great for that. Although I do worry, like my son's in college, and the first thing I thought was, oh no, like if Microsoft has AI and it's embedded in Word, like does that mean everybody's like paper, their essays are going to be AI generated? And so
Right.
my mind went so far, but it's amazing what's, coming at us every day. So it's really going to alleviate the admin burden, like I said before.
Yeah.
So how do we make it all work, Nicole? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my favorite term is a systematic approach to training. I talk about it every day, and I have for 25 years, ever since I was in public ed. And I want to bring it up because it's key to identifying when and what technologies we should use. So we always talk about, we want to ensure the right training for the right people at the right time with the right methodologies. And really the value of this is that in our world, we exist to improve performance of our companies, to improve our business outcomes, to ensure that our workers are performing work reliably and safely. We are stewards to the company from a cost perspective. So let me just give you an example, and I'm sure everybody on the call has had this happen to them. An issue happens at work, and the immediate answer is, oh, we better go train people. Well, training costs a lot of money. So if we're not using the systematic approach to training and truly sitting back and conducting our needs analyses to determine is it training or not, then we're not being stewards of the company. So I really want to just talk about the systematic approach to training, why it's so important when we are identifying different technologies, and then how we sort of get there. So I'll hand it over to you, Claude, for the next slide.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, just at a high level, I think the key to this, and it ties into what Nicole just said, and then she's going to expound on it more, is you really have to start at the end and work backwards as you make your decisions about training. So first, you need to start with what are the desired business and performance outcomes? What is the end result? I have so many people come to us and say, tell us what the best tool for this training program is. And the response is always, well, it depends what you're trying to accomplish. What's your business goal? And then there's often silence on the phone. So, but that needs to be firmly implanted is what's the desired business performance? And then you work backwards to what are the learning performance outcomes? The learning objectives, the modalities you're going to use, the blended modalities. And doing all that, then we're not really talking about that much today, but everybody struggles with learning measurement too. If you know what your desired business performance outcomes, and it makes the measurement of the impact of the learning much easier. Nicole?
Yep. So that methodology. So we in our industry have a standardized needs analysis and design meeting template. And that's probably why we're more proficient than some industries who just, don't have that. So we're trained, we have our training, we conduct our needs analysis and the design meetings. And I would say that this is key to getting to your methodologies and outcomes, because we have the right people at the table. So we sit down, we conduct our needs analysis and our design meeting, the stakeholders at the table. So the potential student, the potential learner is there, providing us guidance and input, helping us really dig into the data and understand. So in this session, we're conducting the needs analysis, is this training, and we're defining our learning objectives. And, Bob mentioned learning objectives. So often I see newcomers, early in career people, really not understanding the importance of the learning objective, but the learning objectives, that's where you're defining the action for which you want your student and your learner to come out of the training and understand. Right. So I just gave some examples that we actually have. So, we have control room operators, and they have to be able to respond to a transient event. And that is a learning objective. Operator will be able to respond to X transient event. Well, we cannot possibly put them through the real transient event when they're going through qualification. And so we create simulations and scenarios of these events. Then, okay, well, what technology will we use? There's certainly the availability of artificial intelligence to help us put together those scenario guides. Right now, we're also using a really cool program, and I'm not going to give you the company name because I can't, but it's this experiential simulation. It's immersive learning, and we use avatars. So we're doing this with our new first line supervisors. So people who've never been people leaders before, who yesterday were a mechanic, today now you're a supervisor, but we expect them to go into the field and provide coaching and feedback to who were their peers yesterday. So we have this program where in our training for coaching and feedback, we're setting them in front of this avatar and we're giving them scenarios. So this happened, that happened, let's practice the coaching and the feedback. And it's excellent. But we had to define that in our learning objectives when we wrote the course on providing feedback and coaching. So the moral of the story here is ensure that in the beginning, when you're developing your needs analysis, your design meeting, your business case for what the outcome is, the methodology for which you're delivering the learning is dependent on the learning objective. And that action verb in the learning objective is so important. Funny story, yesterday I was reviewing a needs analysis because I review them. And I saw somebody in the comments say, Nicole's never going to approve this learning objective. And the reason, and I didn't, and the reason was because it said student will be able to discuss X. And I thought, I don't care if the student can discuss X. I care if the student can go hang the cross arm on the utility pole out there and be safe. So them discussing it means nothing to me. They need to be able to go hang it. And that means something different for the methodology and the technology for which we use. So I'm going to stop there a minute. I know it's really hard for me because I want to take questions. But really,
we can take questions. Anybody who has questions, throw them out there. Go ahead.
I'm just I'm Italian, so I use my hands and I want people's.
I love your passion for this. I love your passion for the topic, Nicole.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So what are your thoughts, Bob or Claude? Am I out to lunch?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think so, Nicole. I think, what's the reason I was excited about talking about this with you is your passion around this, and the fact that this is the basis of defining a good use case, like you said, for any type of media or methodology you're going to use. And I think it was really important to tie this in for folks to see, yes, we might be talking about something new and evolving and different and kind of threatening to a lot of people. But if you follow the discipline and the process that we should be using as instructional designers, you're going to get to the right place. You don't have to learn new things to get to that point. We just have to keep doing what we do well.
Absolutely. And my information's out there. I'm willing to share anything, help anybody, give advice, support. Please let me know. I love this.
Yeah, I think this is a great chart, and if anybody wants Nicole to expand on any more or add any more detail, just put a comment in the chat or ask a question, and we'll still have, I think, a couple of minutes to dig deeper. But let's go now to, if you've gone through this process and you have a good use case, then what? What are the next steps?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here, Claude. Obviously, we're all familiar with creating business cases to support our initiatives and budgets, and it's really not a whole lot different for emerging technology than what it would be for standard technology or things that were yesterday's solutions. But without doing the type of things that Nicole just talked about to create the basis for measurement and the ROI, it's going to be really difficult to put that together. What is different or make things different in this type of emerging and rapidly changing environment is that there's a lot of diligence to be done on the make buy partner models. Nicole mentioned some things they're doing themselves and some things they're partnering with folks with. And we've seen that across the board, because really some of the tools out there make it very easy and safe to do some of the things yourself if you train yourself properly and understand the limits of what you're doing. Other organizations, though, you may not have the capability and capacity to set up your own internal large language model, and you're not comfortable having your data go to the cloud and back and forth, right? These are areas where you may want to look at a partner that can assist you in getting the results that you want, making sure that your data is properly cared for and secure. I just think this process is a little bit different when it comes to AI, because it is somewhat new there. And Nicole, I'd be interested, and I'm going to talk about governance in a second, as you talked about that, but I'd be interested in maybe some of the thought process around what Entergy's done in terms of your decision making on make buy partner for some of the solutions that you talked about. The third area there, before we get to that, is really something Nicole touched on early, and we're going to mention it again because it's incredibly important because of the potential for misuse or intentional or unintentional misuse or misapplication of technology. And particularly when we're dealing with transformational efforts, again, that and the first definition I provided span large segments of the organization. The need for a robust and well-defined governance process is absolutely critical to making this work within organizations and proceeding in a planned and controlled manner. So Nicole, anything you want to add to the make buy?
Yes. So it's a hot topic right now for us because we have just centralized our training programs across our company, and we did not go up in headcount. So I'm sure everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's happened to me. More work, less people, or not more people. Yep, exactly. So this is where you really have to look at it. I mean, if something is common, so you do your needs analysis, you determine what you need to train on. If you're about to go train on something that's common, that is industry standard in your world, it's probably cheaper to go buy it. Somebody else has made it. Why would we spend 4 weeks at $60 an hour, et cetera, to go create it ourselves? it's the business case here and which makes sense. For us, if we know it's really complex to our in like line workers, for example, then we will make that. We're not going to have somebody else write our training for line workers because it's such a high risk job. And the safety significance of it, I wouldn't trust, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but I want to make sure that that's spot on per the task analysis, per the work we perform. So, and then sometimes there's partnering, especially when you do want technology. So we may write the lesson material, but if we want some technology, we may go buy that, which is what I was talking about before. We wrote the coaching and feedback course, but the use of the avatars was where we partnered with this company, and then working together, we built the scenarios together. So it really depends on your analysis. Obviously, it depends on your funding. And I would say, don't hesitate to benchmark. I profusely benchmark with my peers across the entire industry and say, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? And people are willing to share. So I would say ask for sure. And you can ask me because we have tons of stuff too. From a governance perspective, we already talked about that. It's really important to set the guidelines. You know, what are the parameters for which we can operate in this world of artificial intelligence? Again, for us, we have nuclear power as part of our portfolio. So we can't just go use AI that's pulling information from outside, but we also can't, we have to have very strict cybersecurity rules. And so that's all has to be defined.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think those are all, I mean, all great points. You know, the one thing I'd be remiss on as a vendor or supplier to the organization is, you know, talking about an aspect of that. And you're absolutely right. That's a preference and a prerogative of organizations to determine what needs to be kept in-house and why.
Yep.
And that's also part of a partner selection, and sometimes in choosing folks that understand high consequence environments and that you're comfortable working with as well. So yeah, those are all great points. So thank you for that. And Claude, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, we're going to go to our wrap poll, and yeah.
I'm sorry, I made a boo-boo. So there was a question that I accidentally answered, and I don't think I was supposed to. So Greg had a question, and it was, is there not a concern AI will dull creativity? And then I just typed in what I thought the answer was.
Okay.
So I wanted to open it up to you guys.
What was the answer?
I said the answer is that's where the needs analysis comes in, because that's where we determine is AI a solution or not. But I would just say be careful for overuse.
Yeah, I think what sometimes people miss about the whole creativity thing. I mean, yes, there are some cases like somebody writing a paper solely through AI, but even that takes some creativity, because when you're generating something in Gen AI, the quality of the prompt is really important. And so, yes, Gen AI may be generating it for you, but it's going to be based on what you ask it. And so your creativity, instead of doing the writing, is really about, okay, if you're going to ask for assistance from Gen AI, what's the best way to ask for it? Because if you put in 3 different prompts with slightly different wording, I guarantee you're going to get 3 different responses. So it's really important that you understand how to do that kind of thing. So there's, I don't know if you call it creativity, but there's, you know, care and preciseness and intelligence involved in making some of these calls.
Yeah, I agree, Claude. I mean, prompt engineering is absolutely huge and something we could spend a whole nother hour on in and of itself. But the other you know, response I'd put to this as well is when we talk about you know, removing the administrative burden from people, you want to talk about dull work that people are doing today and freeing them up to contribute for the knowledge, skills, and talents they were hired for. I would think and hope would foster creativity. The other piece that we have to recognize, and I think you both touched on this, is AI doesn't have the answers. AI has a starting point for that specific subject matter expertise to be applied to make it better, to find the limits and to build upon that. And yes, you can build that into your feedback loops for additional prompt engineering into trained language models and things like that. But AI is only going to be as good and as the information it works with. There's always going to be a need for people to apply creativity, I think, to any good solution.
All right, I don't want to cut anybody off, but we've got 4 minutes and a couple of questions coming in. So Shay, our producer, is going to announce our raffle winner real quick.
Yes, thank you, Claude. So before we wrap up today's webinar, I would like to announce the lucky winner of our raffle. Congratulations to Michelle Thatcher on winning today's prize, a $100 Amazon gift card. We will send you an e-card shortly to celebrate your win. Back over to you, Claude. Congrats, Michelle.
All right.
Great. So we've got a couple of minutes and there's a few questions. One is, let's see. So Cindy asked about, are there any industry-wide standards yet on how to interact with AI? Anybody got an answer that?
Industry is an interesting term, right? I think that Nicole might talk about in industry different, and then I might look at it in our automotive clients or even the branches of the armed forces that have put out guidance related to that. So I think there absolutely are beginnings of standards, but I'm not outside of the armed forces that I can think of that I'm working with aware of an accepted industry standard. Nicole?
Is the question in the chat? Because I was looking.
It's in the questions tab.
Okay. Which I don't see. I'm sorry, I don't see it.
I'm from Cindy Yee. So are there industry-wide standards?
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Well, I guess it depends, like to Bob's point, it depends on which industry you're in. I would say for our industry, we're regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the government and NERC and FERC. And so we have a lot of standards. We know what we cannot do for things, but for the most part, that's what we're working on right now is the policy statements from within Entergy that defines what is allowed and what is not allowed. And then will we create our own or will we be licensing with someone else? And honestly, for learning, most likely we've talked that we'll probably license with a vendor for how we use artificial intelligence because the technology changes so fast that we would never be able to keep up with it. And so if we have a licensing agreement, then we're always getting the best technology. And then someone else's question was about our needs analysis, and we'll have to revise our needs analysis to put those parameters in there that kind of says, here's what is fair game for AI, and here's what's off limits.
Okay, we're fortunately almost out of time. Maybe a minute to any final thoughts or comments from Bob or Nicole on anything today?
No, the only thing I'd add, Claude, is if this sparked any interest generation, people want to find out more about the use cases, the standards that Nicole talked about, the templates, please reach out to us.
Nicole, anything?
Oh, if please reach out to me. I mean, I've lived in this world and it fuels me from the daily grind. I absolutely love it. So please reach out to me anytime. I will promise I'll call you back. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It's been a great webinar. I think we covered a lot of ground. There's a lot more ground to cover. So maybe this is a topic for another day as well, where we drill even deeper. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thanks to Bob and Nicole. Thanks to VPS for sponsoring, and thanks to all of you, especially for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. Take care, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Brandon Hall Group webinar. Bye-bye.